Hi, this is Graham Helfrich, Technical Advisor Manager for the Engineering Software here at IHS Markit. Welcome to the weekly Did You Know episode, where we learn how to do something of value that you probably didn't know about your IHS Markit engineering software. Today we're going to look at how you can easily make custom calculated attributes from both your production history, for example, calculating your peak rate, or from other attributes you have, such as calculating your lateral length from perforation intervals. And it's funny because we found a lot of Harmony users are totally unaware that they can do this, even if they've been using Harmony for years. So let's check it out, and we'll also talk about why would you want to do this. So what I mean by a custom calculated attribute is trying to get a numerical value for your peak rate from your production history. For example, your IP30, your IP60. Another example would be, what's my 30-day cum? What's my 90-day cum? How can I extract that from my production history in Harmony? What if I want to find my average GOR over a 100-day period for one well or hundreds of wells? And another example would be is if I'm using EnerDeck or AccuMap and I have the perforation intervals available, how can I calculate the lateral length from that within Harmony, right? So the other question is, why do we even want to use these sorts of values? How can we get value from them? Well, one thing is cross plots. And make sure you check out episode number 7 to learn how to make cross plots in Harmony. But really, here's an example where we're looking at the EUR on the y-axis against the calculated peak gas rate for many wells to see if there's a relationship. So how do we calculate that peak gas rate in Harmony? That's one of the questions we're going to answer today. Another example of cross-plotting is maybe my lateral length cross-plotted against the EUR for many wells. Is there a relationship there? How do we calculate that lateral length? Another would be is if we're doing our type wells, how can we normalize a well's performance by its lateral length with our type well? And then another is maybe we want to bubble map the peak rate for many wells or bubble map the average GOR for many wells. So again, the real point of this is how do we extract these values for peak rate, GOR, cum, lateral length as an attribute from our well information inside Harmony? I'm going to show you that right now. First, we're going to look at how to calculate the peak rate. So I've got about 1,000 wells in my Harmony Enterprise project here. I'm using EnerDeck data, but you can be using AccuMap. You could be using your own daily production data. And for each well, we of course have a unique production history. In this case, gas volume. So what I want to do is I want to extract the peak rate not only from this well, but from all of the wells here and have that as a numerical value. So the first step is going to attributes. And you'll see there's a lot of default attributes that are kind of listed here on the left. We're going to make a brand new attribute with this plus symbol. We're going to add an attribute. I'm going to call it IP90, whatever you want. So the peak rate within the first 90 days. And it's going to be a number. We need to pick the unit type. So I'm going to have this as a gas rate. In my case, here are the units, and the location, I'm going to put it under the category cumulative volume. These are some of the default categories. You can make your own category if you want, but that's where I'm going to put it. Now, if you happen to have some spreadsheet with these numbers already calculated, maybe something a bit more complex than peak rate, if I left this as input and said OK, it would give me a blank column here called peak rate, and I could paste into that any number I want. But in our case, we want to calculate the peak rate from our actual production history within Harmony. So when we click calculate, we get this cool calculator that pops up. So I'm going to make a little formula here, and we've got these buttons like minimum, maximum, average, value at a particular time, and when you hover over these, there's a tooltip, and it tells you a sample of what the formula will look like. So in our case, we want to say max. We're looking for the peak rate, and so I'm reading the tooltip there. So I click on that. I go and find my gas rate, and again, according to the tooltip, it tells me that I need to put a comma and then the start time and then the end time. So because I'm using monthly data in this particular case, 0, and then I said 90 days or 3 months, so 3. Now if you were using daily data, you would put 90 in the term of days. Because we're using monthly data, I put 3. Close bracket, click update, and I can just double check that my units are how I want them to be here. Everything looks good. I say OK. Okay, and we see we have a new column called IP90, and there's a number in it, 3.7 million cubic feet per day. We can go double check, and we see, there we go, 3.7 million cubic feet per day. This would be kind of silly if this only worked for one well, but you can pick all the wells, hundreds of wells or thousands, and that calculation is going to apply to each well. So now you can sort these wells by lowest or highest peak rate based on that calculation. So you might have an IP30, IP90, IP 1 year, whatever you want. So this is an example of doing that calculation. Let's look at our 6-month cum next. So we'll make another attribute. We'll call it 6-month cum. It will be a gas volume. We can keep these units the same if you want, whatever you want to do. We will put this under our cum volume category. We'll click calculate. And we can go see our production gas, and we've got our cumulative gas. Now, which of these calculations do we want to use? I'm going to use value at specific time. So we'll start with that. Next, according to the tool tip, we're going to pick the column we need, and then we're going to say at 6. So what is the cumulative volume for each well at 6 months? Okay, I see that my units are how I want them. I say OK. And we see that we now have a column called our 6-month cum for each well. And you can sort this, you can do whatever you want with this, right? So the point is we're calculating this from our production history. Why don't we look at creating an average GOR from some oil wells? Okay, so I've got some wells producing gas, oil, and water here. We can always turn on the GOR if we want to visualize that, but I want to calculate the average GOR over, let's say, 3 years, okay, for each of these wells. So we'll go to our attributes, we'll make a new attribute, we'll call it our 3-year average GOR. It's going to be a number, gas oil ratio, it's got the units. We'll put this, I'll just put this under cum to be a bit lazy for the category, and we'll make our calculation. So again, we want to find this an average of our GOR for each well over 3 years. So we're going to use this average button, start with that, go to our production data set, ratios is down here, GOR, and then the average is going to say between what time. So we're going to start with a comma from the beginning to 36 months in this case, because I'm using monthly data. Update, and we say OK. Okay, so now I can pick all my wells here, and I can see the range of my 3-year average GOR for all these wells. So far I've showed you how you can create custom calculated attributes by extracting information from the production history of the well. But what about if we want to get a value by taking a numerical attribute, for example, the perforation top and bottom, and finding the difference between those? Or maybe we want to do something complicated where we take the number of fracs and multiply it by the pounds of sand, anything like that, right? So let's do it here. So in this case, when I go under completions, I can see that I can report my top perforation depth over here in feet, and also my bottom perforation depth. So you can imagine if we take the difference between those two, we could assume that is the lateral length. But how do we get that as an actual lateral length value? Well, we're going to make a new attribute. We're going to call it lateral length. It's going to be a number. It's going to be a distance. I'm going to put it in feet and meters. I'm going to put it under completions, and we'll say calculate. So in this case, we don't really need these complex formulas. All we need to do is go under well attributes, completions, and here we've got our bottom, which is the bigger number for depth, minus our top perf. We're going to make sure these are all in the units that we want, feet in this case, and we say OK. And we can see the result is a new column called lateral length, and we can sort this from highest to lowest, and now you can do anything with these values. You can do cross plots, you can normalize your type well, and again, watch episode number 7 to learn how to cross plot, for example, EUR versus peak rate, EUR versus lateral length, things like that. So at the end of the day, what does this really mean for you? Well, this is really all about time saving. If you're already performing these calculations in Excel, you can save a lot of time and just do them in Harmony like I showed you here. One of the big benefits of this is if you're using a shared Harmony Enterprise project on a SQL database, you can make these custom calculated attributes one time and everybody who's sharing that project can see them and benefit from them. The other thing is, if you're not already doing cross plots or things like this to compare a peak rate 6-month cum against, for example, EUR, well, just remember, watch episode number 7 to show how to do all these cross plots in Harmony Enterprise, and I've just showed you how you can make these custom calculated attributes. Again, if you're going to be doing type wells and you want to normalize by lateral length or any other numerical value, I've just showed you how you can create those custom calculated attributes. And that's it. I want to thank you for your time. If you have any questions, always call or feel free to email me, and subscribe to be notified of next week's Did You Know episode.